So today, basically, I'm going to go through just some personal branding tips and tricks as you guys are starting to morph away from school and enter into the different career paths that you'll be entering into across Canada, internationally, in different industries, different focuses. But all of the tips and tricks that I'm going to talk to you about are pretty valid in today's world as well as moving forward. So I'm just going to share my screen. Everybody good to see shared screen? I just need some nod of heads, and I'm pretty solid that way. Awesome. Okay. So as Fran explained, I am a business development officer with the Hamilton Business Centre. So there's a network of over 50 centers across Ontario. And what we do is help people who want to start their own business. So we've worked with a lot of medical students and PhD students in the years through our summer company program, as well as our Starter Company Plus program, because sometimes either through your medical or your educational focus, as well as through your hobbies, you might actually choose a career in self-employment versus pursuing a career through an employer. So at the Hamilton Business Centre, we offer a number of different resources, training, grant programs, mentoring, and coaching that allow you to get the skills and development needed to actually start a business in Hamilton. For those of you who aren't from Hamilton or don't plan to stay in Hamilton after you're done your studies, please note there are a number of small business centers across Ontario, and they are worldwide as well. They just might be under a different name. And then, as Fran mentioned, I've been working with them through the development of the website, and that's just under I love entrepreneurship, so I have my own business as well. So I like to stay busy, and I like to use all my skill sets, and that's something that I want you guys to consider as you're working on the branding and professional development to showcase to potential employers in the future. It's not just about your school and your studies, but it's about the dynamic individual that you are as a whole. So just first and foremost, understanding that personal branding is an effort that you put forth to influence public perception. So now more than ever, with all of our social media platforms, our internet, our cell phones, our tablets, we're attached to technology all of the time. So people are constantly taking videos and selfies and group shots, and they're posting them to a variety of different platforms, and you might not be aware of everything that you're tagged in or in the background of, but all of these videos and images and content that you're putting out there, either directly or indirectly, does influence public perception. And in your next phase of life, when you're going for interviews and you're applying for positions or you're applying for loans to open your own business or any kind of scope like that, there's going to be the alternative search by hiring managers to see that you are the right candidate for the position outside the interview and outside what you said is on your resume. So it's very important for you that to have an understanding of who you are and who you want to represent to hiring managers, to the industry, to the influencers in your industry that you want to work within, and make sure that that persona is not only who you are in person, but it's also the persona that you represent online. And I want to talk to you today about some ways to keep that persona public so people can find it and validate it and make sure that you're the right fit for the industries that you want to enter into, but also understanding that you might be an avid guitar player, and maybe that's a part of your persona that you want to keep separate or more private. So being aware that there's different levels of privacy you need to be aware of. There's different levels of sharing all the aspects of who you are out into the public, because it does come down to perception, and it does come down to you representing yourself in a professional and confident way. So the 4 specific areas that we're going to talk about today is specifically your overall online presence. We're going to talk about specific communication preferences or settings that you will have. We're going to talk about personal social media use, and then your professional social media use as well. If you have any questions, feel free to include them in the chat, or if there's time at the end, we might tackle some at the end there too. So one of the biggest things that I cannot emphasize enough is for you to Google yourself. So if you just go into any search engine, put your full first and last name in there, make sure that you use any alternate names, any nicknames that you might go by, and try to put them in quotation marks. So if you were to Google my name, and in the interest of not having to like unshare screens and share screens again to show you my Google search results, if you were to Google me, there's one other person in Ontario with my name, and I know about her very well because it's important that I know about her very well. When I was job searching 10 plus years ago, she was the only other person that came up, and she had a stronger online presence than I did at the time. She's a nurse. She works in North Bay. She's received awards for her profession, but she also has different personal interests that don't necessarily align with mine. So if a hiring manager potentially Googled me and hadn't seen me yet, or hadn't met me, or hadn't had an engagement to learn a little bit about me, they wouldn't necessarily know, is it me in North Bay or is it me in Brantford, Hamilton region that they're actually talking to? And people will start to form a perception of you based on the information they find in a Google search, as well as in a video or an image search or a news search. So it's really important, excuse me, that you search your full name, your alternate name. If you've changed your last name, also make sure that you're checking your images and your videos, because sometimes your friends and family might tag you or label you in images or videos that you're unaware of. And I'll give you a really short story for that. So I was in a wedding about 13 years ago, and it was really hot that day. And the air conditioning in the church wasn't working. So we had a whole bunch of fans around in the bridal suite, and there was a bunch of photos taken of the bridesmaids basically fanning themselves, trying to stay cool at the end of July. And there were some very interesting photos that got uploaded of us trying to stay cool of that day, and we were tagged in it. So 10 years ago, when you searched my name, one of those, or actually a couple of those images came up. And some of them, I don't know who took those photos. I'm assuming it was the bride's mom, but she took them in such interesting ways that they could only make you chuckle, but they could have influenced public perception in more of a comedic way, but it took away from the professionalism that I might have been trying to exude. So in that case, I could simply have contacted my friend or my friend's mom and just ask them simply to reduce or remove that tag. Keep the picture. It's absolutely hilarious. I remember that day, but watching and making sure that images and videos or content that you're tagged in doesn't potentially influence other people's perception or reputation of you in a negative way, okay? Watch and learn to make sure that the other person who might have a similar or same name to you, learn a little bit about them. I have been asked in the past about my pseudo name sharing person, just because there was, her name was in a news article, and they wanted to ask me if they actually, in an interview quite a few years ago, I actually got asked if I had been to North Bay recently. So being aware that other people's actions can have a direct impact on you, whether you think it's fair, whether you think it's right, it's important for you to always do that research and make sure that your reputation is intact the way that you expect it to be when going for interviews, as well as making sure if there's anybody else with similar names. If they have a challenging reputation, that might actually be brought in during an interview or hiring process for you. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about are the communication preferences when you're job searching. So most of the time you're going to be applying for jobs via email, via an online, like an uploading service through the Human Resources Department. You might be talking to hiring managers over the phone, over video chat, excuse me, etc. So just a couple really quick suggestions and recommendations is, first and foremost, just review all of your communication channels. There's a difference between being a student and having an informal presence and now going into an industry and wanting to be recognized as an actual professional and as a graduate and as somebody who wants to be seen in a certain light, in a certain industry, a certain reputation and professional appearance that you might want to show to your employers, as well as your potential future peers. So making sure that you use a professional and appropriate email address. I know most of you will have like a school or a McMaster email address that you might consider using, and that's fine. If you do end up using a formal email address or like a Gmail or Hotmail account, that's fine, but making sure that it's appropriate. So try not to have something that's cutesy, don't have anything that has numbers or dates or your birthday in it. It gives away some false information, and again, that can be slightly misleading. Whether it leads to a negative reputation or not, it's yet to be known, but please be aware that it can impact your reputation. So if you haven't already, go and secure your first and last name with a Gmail account. Try very hard not to use the recommended ones that just add numbers or extra letters to it. Try to make sure that you're strategic with dashes or underscores or periods. Try very hard to use and find a professional email address outside of your school one if that's a preference for you. Some of you will have an email signature or auto reply set up. Please make sure that is updated. It is spelled accurately. Your grammar is checked, your context is correct, all your links that might be in it are correct, etc. One of the biggest things that I have noticed, whether you're in school or outside of school, is when people first set up their settings, you have to put your first and last name in, and people will uppercase it or lowercase it. And sometimes people have spelled their name incorrectly in their own settings. Please double check to make sure that it's a professional setup. It does have an impact on your impression. I worked for an employment agency for 4 years, and I was a recruiter in my past life as well. These small things do have a direct impact on your reputation and your first impression. So go out of your way to make sure that you set things up properly. Please spell your name accurately. And remember, context, spelling, and grammar does go a long way. When you are applying for jobs via email, make sure that you put in the appropriate subject line and content body. We receive emails all the time with no subject line, no body content, and just a random resume attached. If you're not going to put the effort in to actually doing the work to help the recruiter or the hiring manager, why should you expect us to do the effort back by trying to figure out who you are and what job you're applying for? Make it easy, act professionally, and do the appropriate steps. Please remember your spelling and grammar checker does not spell check the content in your subject line, and you'd be surprised how many errors come through that way. For those of you who have voicemail set up on your cell phone or landline phones or VPN options, make sure that you change your voicemail message. It just needs to have your name, and it should recall the phone number they've called just in case somebody calls the number inappropriately or incorrectly. And make sure that you clean out your inbox regularly. A hiring manager will get very frustrated if they call and they learn that your inbox is full and they can't leave a message. A hiring manager is not going to keep calling you back. Again, effort must be put forth on both ends. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. For your video chat, you'll see that everybody has like a name association. Most of you have either your first name or your first and last name or a form of your name. Again, spelling, grammar, make sure that you make it easy. When you're doing any video chatting, make sure that you are dressed appropriately at the top and at the bottom. Try making sure that you have, again, just remembering that level of professionalism. So when it comes to your personal versus your professional social media usage, I want you to remember a couple of things as well. First and foremost, just do a basic review. Check the social media platforms that you are registered on. Check to see what your settings are. Do all of your posts go public? Do you have friends settings? Do you have private settings? Do you have group settings? And that this will come through the general web search that you do to see exactly what people can find out about you. Log out of your Facebook and your Instagram accounts, log out of things and see exactly, especially Facebook. Learn to understand what people can see that you've been posting. Again, these are things that hiring managers only normally will do Google searches and social media searches for serious candidates that they're actually looking to hire. And the reason hiring managers do that is, one, they're looking to validate the content that you shared on your resume and on in the interview. Unfortunately, a lot of people directly lie or stretch the truth during an interview, and they want to validate and make sure that you are who you say you are. They want to make sure that you're a good fit for not only the company, but the position, the industry, potentially stakeholders that you might be engaging with, customers or clients you might be engaging with, and they want to make sure that your overall reputation fits the reputation of the company. A lot of hires and candidates will have a problem with this and say, why can't I just post what I want to? It's my own personal account. It's my own personal thoughts and ideas. And you're absolutely right. We have freedom of speech in this country, and it's a wonderful thing. But hiring managers also have the freedom to search for you, and they have the freedom to hire the people that they think will best fit, not just with credentials, but also personality. And you have to be aware of that. So it's important for you to manage that social media platform moving forward, and just making sure that what you want these potential hiring managers to see, they can see. And things that you don't want people to see, you change your settings to see. You're allowed to be who you are. You're allowed to have the opinions and voice that you have, but you need to understand that it will reach a different audience now as you start job searching, and you need to be ready and prepared for that. Okay? When you are on your own personal accounts, make sure that you're constantly posting interesting facts about yourself, your industry, your research. Make it publicly shareable. Help hiring managers want to hire you and show that you're a good fit for the industry. If people are following you or people are commenting, please always remember to respond to all comments in a very positive, productive, and professional manner as well. Okay. Some people will try to use different tactics to avoid being found on social media, such as using their first and middle name versus their first and last name. Please be aware that depending on what settings you have set up, hiring managers might still find you. So even if you do manipulate your name, you might still be found depending on what other settings you have turned on. Again, some people will set up groups or other settings to make sure that some of their content is private and is only available to friends, whereas some content that you share is publicly available. So a lot of this stuff you guys already probably know, but I need to reinforce it because I've been on the other side, I've been on both sides of the hiring spectrum. And please be aware that hiring managers do this. They do outsource to other companies to make sure that they are hiring the wrong candidates, because too many organizations and businesses have hired the wrong candidates. Okay? So on the flip side of that, it's important that you do have a professional social media presence. It's important that you do have some social media set up that allows you to engage in a professional way with potential thought leaders or influencers or hiring managers or companies that allow you to start to grow your career in the direction that you want to do. So again, if you have any existing professional platforms such as LinkedIn or Alignable, you want to make sure that that content is reviewed. You want to ensure that those names and those platforms are all reviewed for the content to make sure, again, that they're representing who you are today, and that content you're confident with sharing to potential hiring managers in the future. So one of the biggest things is if you don't have a LinkedIn account, it's really recommended that you set one up. It's free for you to set up a LinkedIn professional account. It's highly recommended that you use it as an extension of your resume, and include that LinkedIn account link on your actual resume so it encourages employers or hiring managers to check out more information about you. LinkedIn allows you to upload content and videos and papers. It allows you to showcase the videos you did regarding your focuses today, and it allows people to see a further extension of you beyond just words on a screen, okay? Again, if you get comments, always reply to comments. It helps show engagement, and it helps you continue to build your network. Please make sure that your profile is always up to date. If you change positions, when you've completed schooling, all those things are really important because people can watch you, they can put you on a watch list. And if you actually change certain settings, like you've now graduated school, things like that, people will actually feel motivated to follow up with you knowing that there's an opportunity to now hire you versus waiting for you to complete your schooling. Another thing, both personal and professional, is to watch who your followers are and in turn watch who you follow. But for LinkedIn, follow and accept followers that fit in your industry or career path. That's what's going to grow your network and make more and more people aware of who you are, what your focus is, what your experience is, your skill sets, your education, etc. And then in turn, start to build that engagement. So go to industry leaders' LinkedIn profiles, go to influencers' profiles within your social media and start posting and engaging with them to start growing not only your network, but to start having conversations with individuals who have the power to hire you or to refer you to open positions in the future. Once you're actually in an interview, don't ever hesitate to recommend to a hiring manager to check out your LinkedIn profile as well, because your resume and your cover letter are a couple of pages of condensed information showcasing you, but your LinkedIn profile has the ability to expand this knowledge in a much greater fashion and to give hiring managers and influencers and industry leaders a better perspective of who you are and potential opportunities that you might fit into, and encourage them to want to reach out to you. And keep it professional. LinkedIn is not a dating site, which some people have used it for. LinkedIn is set up a specific way, and you want to make sure that you're using it in an appropriate way. And it in turn will award you with that by referring really great network contacts for you to follow, and for referring you for people to follow in return. But keep your personal, keep your professional. But at the end of the day, if somebody can find you online, and somebody can access any of your profiles publicly, is what these people, is this content what you want them to know about you? Is this a true and accurate representation of who you are today? And is this a true and accurate representation of the person that you want an employer or a placement officer or a loan officer to see and learn about? And if it's not, now is the time to correct those steps, those posts, and amend them. Don't get rid of them, just amend the settings on them. Okay? So just some job search tips for you guys to be aware of. I cannot emphasize these main tips enough. So one of the first one is just to make sure that you choose appropriate file names. It sounds so small and so minimal, but it has, again, a first impression. I haven't met you yet, and this is kind of the first impression to show me how detail-oriented you are, how well you can follow instructions. And if you actually can't, in file names or upload instructions, show me how detail-oriented you are, that actually can portray a negative first impression. So just some examples through it. It's a lot easier to literally have your first and last name with the word resume as a file name versus like a code word. One of the most important things to please do is always customize your cover letter and resume. Hiring managers know when you do not customize. As soon as you get a cover letter that says "to whom it may concern" or "dear sir, madam," they know that it's an uncustomized document. And it's because you didn't do the research. If your cover letter and your resume are vague and don't actually use examples that fit the position, if you're not including measurables to help people understand how many experiments you did or what your actual results were that might relate to the job posting, but you're just talking generically using vague terminology, they know that you are not customizing it and that you're using the same cover letter and resume for every application, and that will hurt you. Do the research. It doesn't take you very long to figure out exactly who the job, like the resume, is going to. Customize to who it's going to. Customize with the job ID number. Use keywords. When they describe what the posting is and the role and responsibilities, as well as the requirements, there are keywords everywhere that are telling you exactly what to do to manipulate your content, your experience, your skills and education, and to show a very specific fit into what that employer is looking for, what that hiring manager is looking for. Do the research, customize your documents. It will convert for you, and it'll have a higher success rate in you finding an actual position you want versus taking maybe a position you don't want. Find your pedestal moments. Your resume is all about you. It should not be a boring document. It should not be vague and generalized. Each of you in your videos alone are able to talk about your unique research, the unique results that you've accomplished to date. It talks about the paths that you've chosen, and some of you even talked about why you chose those paths. That content in some capacity should be reflected in your cover letter and resume, especially if you're applying for positions within the same field of interest. The resume and cover letter aren't being written for you. They're being written for other people. They're being written for a hiring manager, an owner of a company, excuse me. It's being written for a human resources manager or human resources assistant. You're not too sure until you do that research, and that's why you need to customize it to them. What do they want? What do they want to know about you? Not what you think is important that they need to know. What are they asking to know about you? What are the credentials they're looking for you to tell them that you have, and making sure you take the time and effort to actually explain the experience, education, and skill sets that you have. Also, please be aware of keyword scanning software. So as I mentioned, I work for the City of Hamilton. We have a human resources department. All resumes and applications that are submitted, they all have a deadline, and all applications are reviewed by keyword scanning software before a human resources person even looks at them, before a hiring manager looks at them, before a department manager even looks at them. That keyword scanning software grades you. And that's what keyword scanning software does. It reviews the keywords, the context to a certain degree, the eligibility, the experience, the education, the training that it's asking for, and then it will evaluate how good of a match you are. And it'll pump out a grade. Either you qualify or you don't. And again, if you're not customizing your resume and your cover letter, your keyword scanning software is not going to be able to understand that you just didn't update it, but you're a great candidate. They're looking for the content that you provided. And if you don't provide it, you're not going to go through and score very high, and therefore you won't be recommended on. Okay? Make sure that you proofread all of your documents before submitting. My favorite bullet point is when somebody tells me that they're detail oriented and that they have a strong English language skill set. And then I go through a resume that has errors in it, or grammatical issues, or double commas, or extra spacing. And those things might seem small to you, but those are reasons for me to say no to you and say yes to another candidate. So don't rush through these things. Write them, edit them, customize them, proofread them, even ask somebody that you trust to proofread your resume and cover letter before submitting it as well. Your spelling and grammar checker will only proofread so much. It doesn't really apply context very well. Excuse me. So please be aware of that. And proofread your documents. If you don't have somebody that you trust to proofread your documents for you, try reading your documents out loud. I know it sounds silly, but you reading it out loud will actually catch some of those errors on your own. Again, remember that who your audience is. It's not you. So if your application, if the application or the job posting says that they want you to submit it in one document, cover letter and resume, don't submit it in 2 documents. That's not what they asked for. This is a perfect initial test to show if you know how to follow instructions. So please make sure you take the time, follow instructions, read through the job posting, make sure that you're not missing anything, because this is a very easy way to also eliminate you from the process. Because at the end of the day, there's only one person who's potentially going to be hired. And I'm looking for every reason to whittle my way through that list to find the right candidate. But if you're making it easy for me because you're submitting documents inappropriately, if you're submitting documents with errors in it, if you're submitting documents that don't show why you're the right fit for this position, I'm not going to take the time to try to interview you because you didn't take the time to show the effort to show me why you were the right candidate or the right fit for this position. Okay? Try very hard as well not to wait until the final deadline. We have a lot of technical issues, especially going on right now with so many people using VPN and Wi-Fi, etc. Apply before the deadline. Make sure that you get that confirmation email, which usually comes back to you, and have some peace of mind that you're not hurrying, because that's when we make mistakes. And then finally, follow up after each interview. This is a lost art. A lot of people don't follow up after the interview. You might not be able to follow up after you've submitted your application or your resume, especially if it's automated or it just goes to a general human resources department. But after you have an interview, you should have written down who the interviewer was, their name, and potentially even asked for a business card. There is no reason why you should not be able to follow up after the interview. Again, you are looking for every little advantage that you can show the hiring manager or the coordinator or the human resources professionals why they should hire you versus somebody else. And one of the ways to do that is to simply follow up. You can follow up via phone, you can follow up via email. Those are the 2 most popular ways. And it's simply to just say thank you. But it's also to just tuck in their head your name again. So in one position, a company might hire anywhere from 5 to 30 people. This is another way to bring your resume to the top, your name to the forefront, and for them to think about you again. It's just a simple thank you for taking the time to interview me for this position again. Maybe going back to some of the conversations that you found of interest, reminding them about a specific skill set that really aligned with part of the conversation, and re-providing your contact information. It takes a couple minutes to do, and it has a high success rate in converting you to the actual person who gets offered the job versus the person who might get forgotten about, especially if it's a bulk hiring process. So be aware that there's a lot of small things that you can do as part of this application process. Some of them might seem, again, very easy and very like they should be pretty self-explanatory. But a lot of people forget about these small things, and these small things are what will land you the job. Okay, so that's pretty much it for me. I'm going to turn off my screen sharing because I know that there was some chat, and I'm not too sure if it was that. There you go. So Lyndon found his namesakes. There you go. I would also like to be associated with Catherine Zeta-Jones. I'm not going to lie to you. So Heather
So
found
would
also,
I.
Pardon?
So would I.
Right? Yes. Mine's not as exciting. I'm not associated with an actress of any kind. But Heather found another one as well. Oh, sorry, there's not another Heather Sheehan. So that's really important. Always also, especially for women watching for married names, things like that, it does go a long way. I have a multi-gender first name with Jodi. It was originally a male name, and there's a bunch of different spelling. One of the other tips I can tell you is, for example, if I would be your hiring manager and you were to send me a follow-up email, spell my name properly. You'd be surprised how many people spell my name incorrectly, and it shouldn't be the reason why I don't hire you, but it also does lead to a negative impression that you couldn't take the time to spell my name accurately or whatnot. So it's the small things that really have a great impact on people remembering you. You want to be memorable. You want to be findable online. You want to have a reputation. It's really important that you all have an online presence in today's day and age, but that reputation, that presence needs to represent who you are today. And if you're finding content that doesn't represent you today, you need to find a way to remove it and update it. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Does that make sense? Pretty good? Perfect. Thank you.
That was awesome.